Forward. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Name is Andy Akel with IG Wealth Management, also a director consultant with the Alberta BNI Alberta North Regional Support Team. Super excited and honored to be introducing our speaker for this session. Aanand is a managing area director with BNI Alberta North, been with BNI for just over 9 years, and truly embodies everything that is BNI. His passion for seeing others grow and succeed is clear in everything that he does. So today, Aanand is going to be sharing his insights on how thinking with an abundance mindset can make a significant impact in both business and life in general. Aanand, it's all yours, my friend.
Thank you so much, Andy, for that wonderful introduction. Didn't know what he actually had prepared, so I was pleasantly surprised. Thank you for that, and welcome everybody to the first breakout room session for our national conference today. And my topic is about scarcity versus abundance. Scarcity mindset is what keeps many of us from achieving our goals. And an abundance mindset refers to a paradigm shift, really in our mind, that there is plenty out there for everyone. So create a collaborative environment for our members. In BNI, one of the strict policies that we have is that we only allow one person to represent a product or a service, right? And that's one of the big selling points, is that you get to lock out your competition. And this is a huge selling point, it's a big draw, and of course, one of the major reasons we build and start new chapters as well. How many of you in the room have competitors? Yeah, pretty much everybody, right? In business, of course, there's going to be other businesses that offer similar products and services, or maybe the exact same ones. What this does not mean, though, is that we lock them all out in terms of collaboration. And so today, I'd like to talk a little bit more about how we can collaborate with others within our industry and how we can translate this into building more effective BNI chapters that are larger and more successful as well. But first, I'd like to share my own personal BNI story with you. I became a BNI member in 2010, and I represented TELUS. And for those of you that are international visitors, TELUS is one of our large telecom companies within Canada. And I was a brand new sales representative at that time. And of course, my goal was to build my client base as fast as I possibly could. And the first thing I was taught to do was cold calls. And my boss would say, you need to be dialing for dollars. And what this really did at that time was train me that business was hard, that you had to fight to acquire new clients. And it really embedded that scarcity mindset into my mind. Business was hard. You had to dial, you had to go door knocking. And what that scarcity mentality really means is that you look at life, you look at business as a finite pie, right? That if one person takes a big piece, that means that there's less for everyone else. And I was completely conditioned to that. And I truly believe in business, when we get involved in business, many business owners, sales professionals were conditioned to this the same way. And that's when I discovered BNI, and it taught me a totally different way to do business. So the first time I was at a BNI chapter meeting and I saw the number of referrals being passed around, it completely blew my mind. When I became a member in my first year of membership, in terms of referrals, it accounted for about 70% of the revenue, of the commissions that I was generating through TELUS. And my second year was very much the same. At this time, though, I was the only member in our entire region of 800 or so members at the time that held the wireless services seat. And I was receiving referrals from members from other chapters. And when you have a very unique seat, of course, that is one of the big advantages, and it naturally happens as you start to network and meet other members. And then one day, things really changed. And a representative from Rogers, which is another large telecom company in Canada, joined a chapter, not my chapter, a different chapter. But that scarcity mentality really still existed in my mind. And I thought my referral stream was going to get cut in half, or worse, that it would just dry up, because TELUS in Alberta is the incumbent, and it is not very well liked in a lot of different areas. And ironically enough, that representative from Rogers worked right across the street from me, like kitty corner from my office. And again, that scarcity mentality, I thought we were going to get into brawls literally in the middle of the street, fighting over BNI referrals. That was where I was coming from. And really that scarcity mentality rearing its ugly head. And really what I was thinking about is, now I was the only member in the region that represented this business, that had that C category, that the Rogers representative would start doing some networking. Obviously, they have their own products and suite of services, and it would cut my referral stream in half, or even take away the clients that I had acquired through BNI and the relationships that I was starting to build. And I shared this fear with one of my members, one of the members in my home chapter, BNI Oil City. And he encouraged me to reach out to that member and book a one-to-one. And for me, I thought that was absolutely crazy. Like, why would I want to sit down with the competition? Like, what good can come of that? And he, again, encouraged me and said, you never know where you'll be able to collaborate, how you'll be able to actually learn from one another, and potentially actually pass business to one another. And again, this was just a really novel concept to me. But I took his advice and I scheduled that one-to-one. And what we found in our first meeting with one another is that there were customers that were not happy with TELUS, and there was customers that are upset with Rogers. And that became our low-lying fruit, that we could actually refer to one another. We would have customers calling us and saying, you know what, it's no fault of your own, but I can't do business with your company anymore, and I'm leaving. And I was able to confidently say to these customers, if you're going to be leaving, I'd love to introduce you to a colleague of mine that works at Rogers, and I will be able to actually help seamlessly transition all of your services to that company. Can you imagine what the customer thought? That I was going to help them actually move over to the competitor. So it helped build my credibility. It helped build our referral relationship. And then very quickly, through other successive one-to-ones, we found even more ways that we could collaborate. We found the differences between each other's products, our services, even just the way we were able to work and work with our clients throughout the different geographical areas of Alberta and throughout Canada. And then we were able to focus on what was most important for the customer and not for us. So we were then focused on working with each other to make sure that our clients had all of their needs taken care of. This was absolutely transformational for me. This was incredible. And it is where my own mental shift happened in moving from that scarcity mindset to an abundance one. And again, that scarcity mentality is what can keep many of us from really achieving our goals. And that paradigm shift to that abundance mindset is what we'll further talk about here now. So how can we create more of these win-win scenarios? We must train our minds to recognize possibilities. And as directors within BNI, in supporting chapters, perhaps even building new chapters, there are a number of tools that are already at our disposal. So here are some of the things that I encourage you to watch for. So these are some of the things that can lead to that scarcity mindset. So what can we do? What can we look out for to create a collaborative environment within our chapters? So first, look for members that are not using their assigned seat classification within a chapter. Those seat classifications will vary from region to region, of course. Take a look to see what your exact seat classifications are that are in use within your region, And when you're visiting a chapter, and if you hear of a member when they're doing their weekly presentation or their feature presentation and they're introducing themselves, they're not using that assigned C classification. And more importantly, if other members of that same chapter are also doing the same thing, this might be one of the first signs that this chapter needs some help in developing, again, that collaborative environment. What you might also see is that category cowboy, right? So I held the wireless services seat when I was with TELUS. Even though TELUS offers a lot of other products under the sun, it was not my place to talk about, for example, internet or business internet and so on. I could very easily have described myself as just a telecommunications representative, right, within my chapter, but my seat was wireless services. So again, this is where you need to understand what the C classifications are like within your own region. But if chapters as a whole are not using the C classifications that are assigned, it's the first kind of inkling that there's that scarcity mindset that is maybe a little bit built into that chapter. Popular categories that are left unfilled within the chapter. Again, in your own regions, in ours, for example, the affirmed seat categories, so the accountant, the financial advisor, insurance, residential mortgages, and so on. Those are extremely popular. In fact, we, of course, have to have a mandatory competition for them. In your own regions, you may have, for example, social media management is becoming very popular, or IT services. If there's popular categories that are left unfilled in a particular chapter, probably something to look into and understand why. And so having those conversations perhaps with the leadership team or even specific members that would be within that contact sphere of that popular category, having that one-to-one and having that discussion is also very important. And then of course, finally, the last big warning sign is plenty of visitors, but no applications. So even further to that, the chapter might not be having any visitor days or stack days. So if you see that there's plenty of visitors coming to the chapter, especially around those C categories, but there's no applications, again, this is where, as a support director, having those conversations with the LET, perhaps again, those members that are within that contact sphere can be very important. Within BNI Connect, there are two main reports that I find personally very helpful to understand what is happening within a chapter. And the first is the classifications not in chapter reports. So this is where you can find this under reports, clicking on under chapter, and then classifications not within chapter. So this is where you'll be able to pull up reports specifically for a chapter that you're supporting and seeing a comparison to how many or which seats are not filled within that chapter that are very popular throughout the rest of the region. So very simple report to understand. The second one, you may not have access to, so it all depends on your level of access through BNI Connect. Please talk to your executive director if you do not have access to this. But this one is the member profession count. And you can find this report under region, meeting statistics. And this is what gives you an overview of your entire region as a whole. And a very useful report to utilize again in your discussions with leadership teams, especially if you're wanting to encourage them to have a focus day or a visitor day, stack day, so many different terms for that. But this tool is really useful to help organize those types of visitor events. Now, once we have this information, how do we approach this topic? How do we actually encourage members to have a collaborative mindset, to actually open themselves to building those relationships with people that they would typically consider a competitor? I found that understanding a member's target market is one of the first most important steps in opening their minds to that deeper collaboration. I hope these look familiar to you because this is right from our member success program. This is an exercise that is often the most challenging for members to really understand. And in our region, when we are doing the member success program training or our advanced training on weekly presentations, We spend a lot of time on this because, again, it is the most challenging thing for most people for most business people and members to really understand and put down on paper. So the first question is that if you're doing a one-to-one in this scenario, if you're doing a one-to-one with a member, understanding what is their product or service. What is the product or service that they would like to market? And so they might have several, of course. If they list off several, perfect, write them down, but then drill down into one of those products or services. Once you've identified that product or service, what is the benefit to the client? What is the benefit of that product or that service? Why does that client need it? What challenges is it addressing? How is it going to benefit their lives? And again, it really depends on what type of member or who that member is and what type of product company that they're representing. And then once you actually understand what the benefit is, now that member can actually clearly define who that client is. So what is their demographic? Is it a part of town that they live in? Is it an age category? Is it a particular type of community that they service? This is where we can help them identify that transactional referral. So this is what most members think of when they ask for a referral, right? I'm looking for this particular type of client this week. And then finally, this is also very important, understanding what professions come across that type of client regularly. So this is where we can help these members build that contact sphere, building those referral relationships, where that profession can also then pass them a constant stream of referrals. And many times we refer to this as the golden goose versus the golden egg, right? The golden egg being that transactional referral and the golden goose being that relationship-based referral. So why do we do this exercise? Well, again, we need to help them understand who their target market is, because imagine what it would look like if there was another member in their chapter that was in the same industry as them, but serviced a completely different demographic. That is really where we can create a win-win scenario. Win-win because now these two members that understand each other's business at a very different level can refer to one another, and all the other members of the chapter have an additional referral partner, right? That other member, I use my own example, if there was another telecom representative in my chapter, all of the other members of the chapter now have access to their contact list, right? Their Rolodex, the 800, 900 people that member brings into the chapter. So that is why this exercise can be so beneficial and why it's so important. Once you've identified several of their target markets, paint a picture again of what collaborating with someone else in their profession looks like. And these are some open-ended questions that I've utilized to get that conversation started. So how are you different from your competition, right? What really sets you apart? And we want to always speak about the differences in a positive light, right? We're not putting down the competition, but this is what makes me different. This is why people prefer doing business with me. Maybe it's again about those products or services that we offer. Understanding how that member competes within their market. Again, do you compete on price? Do you compete on quality? Do you compete on content? Do you compete on added value? And again, you can cater these questions, again, specific to that industry, but understanding how that member competes within their market can, again, open up more avenues to speak about other avenues of collaboration through BNI and their membership. Another really good question is, what is a common question you get asked by potential customers? And really, when we're doing these one-to-ones and we're meeting with these members, we're trying to ask questions from different angles to really get an idea of who their target market is again. And the reason we were asking these questions from the different angles is because, again, understanding the target market is one of the hardest things for us to really drill down into. And Carrie, I know you do a lot of this training in BC. I'm sure you can agree that getting a member to get super specific about their ask is a really, really big challenge. So I've had some great success asking these types of questions. I focus a lot of my time on building new chapters within BNI. And this is a mindset that we try to instill with all of our core group members from day one, right? Is how to actually create that collaborative environment. And as directors, as referral marketing professionals, this is one of our biggest objectives, right? Is looking for ways we can support members by expanding their business, of course, and through a very collaborative environment. That's really, in a nutshell, what BNI is all about. I'd like to take a few minutes to share some of our own successes within our region here in BNI Alberta North. We have had a chapter that had 5 lawyers from different firms represented. So yeah, they had a member that was in real estate law, litigation law, family law, intellectual property, and business law. How amazing is that? Typically, you might see 1 or 2 lawyers within a chapter. We've had a chapter that had 5. In our region, we've had a chapter that had 2 residential real estate agents, one that focused on acreages and farms, and another that focused on metropolitan sales, so single family homes and condominiums. Traditionally, this is a seat category where we'd only have 1 member in our region, but these 2 members found a way, they uncovered what their actual target market was, and they decided that it would actually be a good idea to collaborate with one another. I'm sure many of you have stories about overlapping trades businesses, right? So you might have an HVAC professional, a plumbing company, a general contractor. In the trades, we often find that there's a lot of overlap within businesses, but I'm sure in your region, definitely in our region, we've seen our trades businesses collaborate on a very different level. In fact, last year when we had a cold snap, the HVAC professionals in our region, they were dealing with a lot of no heat calls. The furnaces were just breaking down all across the city. And they actually organized themselves so that when there was a no heat call in one corner of town, instead of that member having to drive all the way across, they knew which member was working in that area of the city, and they were able to actually refer back and forth with one another. So how incredible is that? And then finally, of course, in the financial and insurance solutions, we're currently building a new forming chapter within the city here in Edmonton. And within this chapter now, we have a financial advisor. We have somebody that, of course, represents life, health, and disability insurance. We have an application for a member that wants to represent group insurance, as well as supplemental insurance. And what's so cool is that at our meeting next week, they've also invited another financial advisor, but that is really specializing in higher net worth, so wealth management. And so they're looking for ways to actually collaborate with one another. And I absolutely love that, because it's from day one. This chapter hasn't even chartered yet, but they're looking at this from that abundance mindset.
And in 5 minutes.
So the mind is everything. What you think, you become. It is so true. Mindset is a critical component of success in business and in life. So my fellow directors and members, you can help inspire and create an abundance mindset and a very collaborative environment in our chapters. And there is plenty out there for everyone. Thank you all for attending this session. My name is Aanand Mehta. I'm the co-managing area director of BNI Alberta North. I'd love to connect with you over LinkedIn. You can take a shot of that QR code. And if you want to book a one-to-one and speak further, I'm happy to do so. Andy.
Awesome. Thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. Key takeaway from that one for me was obviously the collaboration. Being in the financial industry myself, we can really see how this works, and making sure your target market, you understand who that is, and how you can work with other professionals to make it better for the client at the end of the day. That's what matters. So thanks again, Aanand. Next session is going to be starting in about 10 minutes. I put the link in the chat if you'd like to get back to the main site there and check out one of the other breakout rooms. And then we do have another 5-ish minutes if anybody has any questions, if you'd be willing to chat with that.
Absolutely, Andy.
You can put it in the chat if you have any questions for Aanand. Otherwise, please enjoy the rest of your day.
I have a question, maybe.
Yes, Carrie.
I did take lots of notes, as I always do. So thank you so much. And one of my questions is around the category cowboys, one of our favorites, and less on the side of the member that keeps spilling over outside of their lane, but any insight from anyone on how to work with the membership committee on upholding the expectations of their role in making sure that members stay inside their lane?
I love that. Great question, Carrie. So my first thought is, when discussing that with the membership committee, talking about the positives of how having members just stick with that representation or representing their specific C category, what that really means for the chapter. And the first thing it means for me is that there's an opportunity to invite another referral partner into the chapter, right? That is a huge benefit to the other members of the chapter. And it can be a huge benefit to that member as well when we look at it from this abundance mindset and actually showing them how they can work with one another. So that's my first thought, is what that additional referral partner means for the other members of the chapter. Anyone else? Would you like to share some insights?
I think, yeah, and I get that, and I think that it becomes a challenge when the member themselves are a long-term member and it's been gone on for years, like 10, 15 years, and they say, you make me choose, I'm leaving. And the membership committee doesn't know how to say, okay, when's your last meeting date?
Yes, that is a tough decision for a conversation for a membership committee to have. We actually have a specialist in the room around this topic. Rob Mamcher's on the call. And I know he just came off mute. Rob,
I'm nodding.
Share your insight.
You saw me like itching for the mute button, like ready to get in there. I truly believe one of the biggest challenges we have in this space is our approach. I think even, I love even changing the language we use to, category cowboy, we used to, we still, the term C creep is thrown out there. I think we tended to paint quite a picture of people that are going outside their C category and painting them in a light that they didn't even realize they were doing. This is a huge education moment for members. And I think, a situation that you're mentioning, Carrie, I question how much we put them in that space from lack of education throughout. Not that anything isn't individually on a particular member and their mindset, but how do we continue to educate? Aanand was talking about us being laser specific in our focus. This is an absolute barrier in that regard, is they want to talk about everything they can do, when we know when you get super focused on what your C category is or what your focus is, you will get more in the end. But if we have membership committees focusing on how this person is breaking the rules, this person is breaking policy, versus, I think by a stat I just made up, 90% of these challenges, it's just the member didn't know. We expect them to know all the areas, ins and outs of C categories as soon as they join. It's incumbent on us to educate.
I just kind of had a moment where if we have those conversations with the members around getting specific on their target markets and what they love to do and who they love to work with, and they'll find that all those bits and pieces on the edge, they don't really need. So then they can come back to their seat organically. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Anyone else? Any other questions?
No, Carrie answered all my questions, so thank you. That worked out great.
It wasn't even scripted.
Awesome. Loving the conversation. That's fantastic.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. I believe we're getting ready for our next breakout room now, Andy.
Most definitely. Yeah, we're going to be getting set up with our next session here. So thanks again for joining us, and thanks for a wonderful presentation, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone.